Have you ever felt that your happiness depends completely on another person? Have you noticed that you constantly sacrifice your needs to please someone else? If you're nodding right now, I want you to know something important. You're not alone in this struggle. Emotional dependency is one of the most subtle prisons that exist, and today, guided by one of history's most brilliant psychologists, Carl Jung, we're going to discover how to break this cycle once and for all. Before we continue, if this is your first video on the channel, I invite you to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We publish content that can transform your life, and you won't want to miss it. And if you're already part of this community, thank you for being here once again. Emotional dependency doesn't appear overnight. It builds slowly, through small decisions we make day after day, decisions where we put others above ourselves. And with each of these choices, we tell our inner self that it's not important enough, that its needs, desires, and dreams can wait. Carl Jung, one of the fathers of analytical psychology, discovered something fundamental about this process. He taught us that our mind is divided into two parts, the conscious and the unconscious. The conscious is what we're completely sure of, what we know that we know. But the unconscious, the unconscious is that vast ocean of thoughts, feelings, and motivations that influence our behavior without us realizing it, and it's precisely in that unconscious where the root of our emotional dependency hides. Jung explained that when we constantly ignore our inner voice, our unconscious begins to manifest in other ways, maybe through unexplained anxiety, recurring dreams, or that uncomfortable feeling that something isn't right in your life, even though everything appears to be in order. Think for a moment. How many times have you felt a knot in your stomach before saying yes to something you actually wanted to reject? How many times have you ignored that feeling because it was easier to please someone else than to face a possible conflict? Jung called these signals messages from the unconscious, and they're like small compasses trying to guide you to your true north. The problem is that society has taught us to ignore them. We've been told that being a good person means always putting yourself last, that love implies constant sacrifice, even at the cost of our own essence. Emotional dependency flourishes in that terrain. It feeds on your fear of loneliness, your need for external approval, and the deeply rooted belief that you cannot be complete by yourself. It's like a parasitic plant that grows around your being, slowly suffocating your true essence. And you know what's most dangerous? That we often mistake this dependency for love. We think that desperately needing someone is a sign of a deep bond, when in reality, it's the opposite. True love, as Jung understood it, never takes you away from yourself. True love brings you closer to your essence. Now let me ask you something important. Do you remember when this dependency began in your life? You may not be able to point to an exact moment, because as I said before, it's a gradual process. But Jung teaches us that it almost always has its roots in our childhood. Perhaps you grew up in a home where love was conditioned on your behavior. Maybe you learned from a very early age that the only way to receive attention was by constantly pleasing others. Or perhaps you experienced abandonment and unconsciously decided that you would never again allow someone to move away from you, even if that meant losing essential parts of yourself in the process. Jung called these patterns complexes, and they're like small programs running in our unconscious, influencing our decisions without us realizing it. The first step to breaking free from emotional dependency is precisely recognizing these complexes, bringing them to the light of consciousness. Because what remains in the shadow has power over us, but what we expose to the light of day gradually loses its influence. Now, how do you identify if you're trapped in the cycle of emotional dependency? Jung left us some invaluable clues. First, if you feel constant anxiety at the idea of the other person moving away, it's a clear sign. If you obsessively monitor their moods, adapting your behavior to keep them happy, that's another red flag. If you've abandoned hobbies, friendships, or personal goals to dedicate yourself exclusively to that relationship, we're also talking about dependency. But perhaps the most revealing is this. In a healthy relationship, you're more yourself. In a dependent relationship, you become someone you barely recognize. Jung developed the concept of individuation, which is precisely the process of becoming the unique and unrepeatable person you're meant to be. Emotional dependency is the biggest obstacle to this process because it keeps you tied to external definitions of who you should be. Now let's get to what really interests you. How to break this cycle. Jung offered us a clear path, though not necessarily an easy one, but I promise you that every step you take in this direction will bring you closer to emotional freedom. The first step, according to Jung, is to confront your shadow. The shadow is that part of ourselves that we've repressed, that we've pushed into the unconscious, because it doesn't fit the image we want to project. In the case of emotional dependency, the shadow often contains our ability to be alone, to establish boundaries, to say no when something doesn't resonate with us. Confronting the shadow involves asking uncomfortable questions. Why am I so afraid of loneliness? What do I believe would happen if this person left me? What parts of myself have I sacrificed to maintain this relationship? I won't lie to you, this process can be painful. It's like cleaning a wound that has been festering for years. But Jung insisted that it's absolutely necessary for healing. The second step is to reconnect with your inner self, with that voice you've been ignoring for so long. Jung spoke of the self as the center of your psyche, that core that contains your most authentic potential. When you live in emotional dependency, you've lost contact with that center. You've placed the center of your existence outside yourself, in another person. How do you recover that connection? Jung recommended deep introspection. It can be through meditation, journaling, or even through analyzing your dreams. Dreams, according to Jung, are direct messages from your unconscious. Paying attention to them can reveal truths that you've been consciously avoiding. Another powerful practice is simply taking time to be with yourself. I don't mean staying home alone while obsessively checking your phone, waiting for a message. I'm talking about being genuinely present with yourself, without distractions. Ask yourself, what do I like to do? What makes me feel alive? Who was I before this relationship? The third step, and perhaps the most difficult, is establishing healthy boundaries. In emotional dependency, the boundaries between you and the other become blurred. You no longer know where you end and where the other person begins. Your emotions become completely dependent on theirs. If they're happy, you're happy. If they're sad, you fall into a pit of despair. Jung understood that boundaries are not barriers to keep others away, but sacred spaces where you can nurture yourself and reconnect with yourself. Establishing these boundaries may provoke resistance in the other person, especially if they're used to you always yielding. But it's a necessary step to break the cycle. Start with small things. Maybe it's dedicating an hour a day to an activity you enjoy without interruptions. Perhaps it's learning to say, I need to think about that, instead of immediately agreeing to what you're asked. Or it could be as simple as expressing your true feelings, even when they differ from those of the other person. The fourth step in Jung's path is the integration of opposites. This means reconciling those parts of you that seem to be in conflict. In the case of emotional dependency, there's a constant tension between your desire for closeness and your need for autonomy. Both are valid and necessary for a full life, but in dependency, you've suppressed one in favor of the other. Integration doesn't mean choosing one over the other. It means finding a way to honor both needs. You can deeply love someone and at the same time maintain your individuality. You can seek genuine connection without abandoning your own dreams and goals. The fifth step is what Jung called synchronicity, that mysterious connection between your inner world and external events. As you begin to live from your authenticity, you'll notice that the world around you also changes. The people around you will begin to interact with you differently. Some, unfortunately, will move away because you no longer fit the role they had assigned to you. Others, surprisingly, will come closer because they are finally getting to know your authentic self. This external transformation is a reflection of your internal transformation. As Jung said, what you deny submits you, what you accept transforms you. When you accept all parts of yourself, even those you've kept hidden, you begin to transform. And that transformation resonates in all your relationships. Now let me be completely honest with you. Breaking free from emotional dependency is not a linear process. There will be days when you'll feel like you've taken steps backward, moments when the temptation to return to old patterns will be almost overwhelming. Jung knew this, and that's why he spoke about the importance of patience and self-compassion on this journey. Every time you fall, remember why you started. Remember that you're breaking patterns that have possibly been with you your entire life. Don't punish yourself for the setbacks. Instead, observe them with curiosity. What triggered them? What can you learn from them? Jung firmly believed that there is no growth without challenges. Every obstacle in your path is an opportunity to strengthen your connection with yourself, to deepen your self-knowledge. Don't see them as failures, but as teachers on your journey to emotional freedom. Another crucial aspect that Jung taught us is the importance of surrounding yourself with the right people during this process. As you begin to break free from dependency, it's natural to seek support, but be careful with whom you share this journey. Some people, even with the best intentions, may reinforce your patterns of dependency because that's what they know of you. Seek those who encourage you to be more yourself, not less. Seek those who celebrate your small acts of courage, your steps toward autonomy. And if possible, consider professional help. A therapist who understands Jungian principles can be an invaluable ally on this path. Now, let me share with you a revelation that changed my own perspective on emotional dependency. Jung believed that our most intense relationships, those that cause us the greatest pain, are also our greatest teachers. He called this projection. When you become emotionally dependent on someone, you're projecting onto that person a part of yourself that you've lost sight of. Perhaps you project your strength onto someone you perceive as stronger than you, or your decision-making ability onto someone who always seems to know what to do, or even your own worth onto someone whose approval you desperately seek. Emotional dependency, seen through this lens, is actually an opportunity to recover those lost parts of yourself. Every time you find yourself thinking, "I can't live without this person," ask yourself, what quality or capability am I seeing in them that I don't recognize in myself? This approach completely transforms emotional dependency. It's no longer just a toxic pattern you must break, but a map that guides you to the lost parts of your being. Now, I'm going to share with you a practical exercise inspired by Jung's teachings, which you can start applying today to break free from emotional dependency. Take a notebook and divide it into 2 columns. In the first, write all the qualities you admire in that person on whom you feel dependent. Be specific. Is it their confidence, their creativity, their ability to set boundaries? In the second column, for each quality, write an occasion in your life when you yourself have demonstrated that same characteristic, even if to a small degree. This exercise, seemingly simple, has a profound purpose: to begin recognizing that those qualities you so admire in another already exist within you. They may be dormant, they may be underdeveloped, but they're there, and recognizing this is the first step to reclaiming them as yours. Jung believed that we all have within us everything we need to be complete. Emotional dependency arises when we forget this fundamental truth and begin to look outside for what we already possess within. As you progress on this path of breaking free from dependency, you'll begin to notice subtle but profound changes in how you relate, not only to others, but also to yourself. You'll start to listen to and value your inner voice. You'll begin to make decisions based on what you really want, not on what you think will keep someone closer to you. And the most beautiful thing of all, you'll discover that, contrary to what you feared, this new independence doesn't isolate you from others. In fact, it allows you to form more authentic and satisfying connections. Because now you relate from fullness, not from lack, from conscious choice, not from desperate need. Jung had a phrase that perfectly summarizes this process: Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens. Breaking free from emotional dependency is precisely that awakening. It's opening your eyes and realizing that you've always had within you everything you've been desperately seeking outside. Now, what happens when you finally break the cycle of emotional dependency? Jung describes a state he called the realization of the self, that moment when all parts of your being work in harmony. It's not a state of perfection, but of integration. It's not the absence of challenges, but the ability to face them from your center. In this state, relationships cease to be a source of constant anxiety and become spaces of mutual growth. You no longer fear loneliness because you've learned to enjoy your own company. You're no longer terrified of abandonment because you know that, whatever happens, you'll always have yourself. Your decisions are no longer motivated by the fear of losing someone, but by the clarity of your own values and desires. You become capable of loving not from desperation, but from abundance. Not because you need, but because you choose. And here's the most beautiful paradox of all. It's precisely when you stop desperately needing someone that you become capable of truly loving. Because real love, as Jung understood it, is never a chain that binds you. It's a space that allows you to be more yourself, not less. This doesn't mean you should end all your current relationships. It's not about moving away from those you love, but about transforming the nature of that connection. About moving from dependency to interdependence, that beautiful space where two complete beings decide to walk together, not because they need each other to survive, but because they choose to share their journey. Imagine for a moment what your life would be like if you could love like this, if you could give without emptying yourself, receive without obsessing, be close without losing yourself. This is not an unattainable dream. It's your birthright, your natural state when you free yourself from the chains of dependency. Jung believed that this journey toward emotional freedom is not only personal, but also collective. Every time an individual breaks free from their patterns of dependency, they are contributing to the healing of the entire world. Because toxic relationships don't exist only between people, but also between groups, communities, and entire nations. That's why I want to invite you, if this message has resonated with you, to begin your path to emotional freedom today. Not because it's easy, but because you deserve it. Not because you can do it overnight, but because every small step counts. Begin by observing your patterns. Notice when you sacrifice your truth to please others. Identify those moments when you ignore your inner voice because it's more comfortable to follow the known path. And every time you notice it, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what would I choose if I weren't afraid? Remember that you're not alone on this journey. Millions of people are awakening to this same truth, discovering the power of choosing themselves. And every time one of us takes that step, it makes the path easier for everyone else. Now, before finishing, I want to ask you something important. If this video has touched something inside you, if it has awakened a spark of recognition or hope, share it with someone who you think might benefit from this message. Sometimes, all we need to start changing is to know that we're not alone, that others have gone through the same thing and have found their way to freedom. And leave me a comment telling me which part of this message resonated most with you, or what has been your biggest challenge in trying to break free from emotional dependency. Your words not only help me continue creating content that really matters, but they can also be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. We're building a community of people committed to their personal growth, and your presence makes it richer and more diverse. Remember, as Carl Jung said, it is not what happens to you, but what you do with what happens to you that determines your destiny. Emotional dependency is not your final destination. It's just a chapter in your story. And today, right now, you have the power to begin writing a new chapter. Thank you for your attention, for your time, and for your willingness to grow. See you in the next video. And until then, remember, every time you choose yourself, you're one step closer to the life you truly deserve to live. A big hug to you.